Second question today is from Robin. Robin says, I'm all for supporting free speech, but should we really champion particularly hateful speech just for the sake of supporting free speech? To that end, is the ACLU that great of an organization? Yeah, this is an interesting question. We can disagree. We often hear that phrase. I vehemently disagree with what you're saying, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And it's a, popular statement. People like to say it. It doesn't matter if I don't agree. You should be allowed to say whatever it is that you want to say. You can be an unrestricted supporter of free speech, saying, as long as we're not talking about speech that violates laws because it is a specific threat, for example, or whatever, I support free speech. We can say that, yet still not champion particularly vile or hateful speech. I defend the right of the Westboro Baptist Church to say whatever it is they want. Granted, they're not breaking any laws with regard to funeral protesting or whatever it is that they're doing, threatening people, etc. Does that mean that I need to go around talking about how great it is that the Westboro Baptist Church is able to say what it says? Of course not. Now, as far as that part goes, Lewis, where do you come in on this thing? The idea of championing particularly hateful speech versus just being in favor of free speech.
Well, I'm remembering that conference you went to where Rush Limbaugh came out on stage and everybody in the place stood up and started clapping.
Because he got the free speech award or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, and you did not clap? Or, you did clap?
I think I stood and I coughed, and I pretended to be too busy with my coughing to really be able to clap or something.
I would not have clapped for him. And, there are people like Glenn Beck, Savage, Alex Jones, Limbaugh. We know that there have been people who listen to the things they say,
right,
who then commit violent acts. And are these radio hosts and personalities instructing people to do that? No, of course not.
Right.
But it's still incredibly, incredibly harmful. But the ACLU does do great things, and you need to have an organization like that that does make sure that the First Amendment is not infringed upon.
There's sort of this binary question: do you support free speech or don't you? Right? And the answer can be yes. And that doesn't mean that you are proactively cheerleading particularly hateful or vile speech. And There's an interesting story. Bill Newman, the ACLU attorney who does the Civil Liberties Minute, when he was early in his ACLU career, he told me the story. He was representing Paul Cameron, the virulent anti-gay nut who we've interviewed on the show many times, who was going to be speaking at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, Massachusetts. And there was some protest that was so significant that he was not going to be able to speak. And Bill Newman, who doesn't agree with anything that Paul Cameron says, was tasked with representing Paul Cameron and ensuring that he be able to speak. Was he championing the specifics of what Paul Cameron was going to say, or was he merely saying, hey, if we have a university that is in favor of free speech, then we need to allow them to speak. We're not promoting the ideas, we're not promoting them, but we can't allow threat of violence to prevent the speech.
Yeah. He, of course, was not championing hate speech in any way, and I'm sure he found what Paul Cameron had to say despicable. But this type of work needs to happen. This needs to be done. Of course, now we have universities all over the country. Students are they're basically trying to quash freedom of speech. They don't want anything inflammatory or anything even remotely controversial or polarizing said.
Some students.
Many. I would say many students. Yeah. It's and Dave, it's not acceptable. We have to allow everyone to say whatever they want, as long as they are not inciting violence.